Okay, welcome to parte dos. Be sure that you still have your guided notes in front of you. Just flip them over to the back, and we are going to learn about demonstrative adjectives together. So, demonstratives. Okay, so demonstrative adjectives point out people and things. So in other words, they demonstrate, that's where the word comes from, demonstrative, they demonstrate who or what you're talking about. So they always sound more complicated than they actually are. Here are some examples in English. If you say, this weekend is going to be fun, you are pointing out a specific weekend, right? If you say, you've got to read that book, that's another example of a demonstrative adjective. Or do you see those students over there? You're pointing out a specific group of students. So that's what demonstrative adjectives are. Just like other adjectives in Spanish, demonstrative adjectives must agree in gender and number with the noun that they modify, or in other words, the noun that they describe. So that's actually what makes them slightly more complicated than demonstrative adjectives in English, because we have to worry about the gender and the number. So also, unlike descriptive adjectives, which usually appear after the noun in Spanish, demonstrative adjectives will appear before the noun. So they will actually, in terms of word order, they'll follow the same pattern that we're used to in English. So here are just a few examples in Spanish so that you can see them in context first. Este fin de semana, meaning this weekend, va a ser divertido, is going to be fun. Hay que leer ese libro. You have got to read that book. Or, ¿ves aquellos estudiantes? Do you see those students over there? So hopefully at this point you've recognized that all of these demonstrative adjectives were included in your vocab list. So you've actually already memorized them, but they're a little bit more difficult to use simply because we have to remember to make them agree in gender and number, and also because we have different adjectives to say the word for that. We have one to talk about that in terms of things that are right in front of us that we can see, and we have another word for that, which means those that are farther away. So that's another way that they differ from what we say in English. Okay, so we're going to fill in this chart that will separate our demonstrative adjectives according to singular and plural and masculine and feminine, and you'll probably see a pattern pretty quickly. So starting with the masculine forms, to say this, we say este, and to say these, we say estos. To say that and those, almost the same word, but without the T, ese and esos. And to say that and those, but referring to something farther away, we would say aquel or aquellos. So since we're talking about the masculine forms, let's say that we're talking about a masculine noun, such as un libro, right? The word for libro is masculine. So if I wanted to say this book that I'm holding right here in my hand, I would say este libro. If I want to talk about that book that maybe I don't have in my hand, but it's pretty close to me, I would say ese libro, that book. Now, if I'm referring to a book that's on the opposite side of the room, or maybe even a book that's not in the same room as I am, I would say aquel libro. The feminine adjectives follow exactly the same pattern, except that instead of an E or an O, we have A's. So to say, for example, this pizza, esta pizza, or these pizzas, estas pizzas. If I'm referring to a pizza that is close to me, but that I'm not holding or that's not immediately in front of me, I would say esa pizza, right? That pizza that's in front of me. But if I want to refer to a pizza on the other side of the room, or maybe I'm talking about that pizza that I had last night that I can't see anymore, aquella pizza. So go ahead and pause the video if you need to in order to finish filling in this chart. Okay, moving on. Let's go ahead and do just a few examples and see how well you understood this. So it says fill in the blanks with the correct form of the demonstrative adjective indicated. Go ahead and pause the video and make sure that you use the notes that we just took referencing the chart in order to fill in the blanks correctly. Okay, let's see how you did. I'm actually going to go ahead and skip the first one and come back to it since it's a little tricky. So if we wanted to say that, cuento means story, that story in Spanish, we would say ese cuento. If we wanted to say this coin, we would say esta moneda, because moneda is feminine and it's singular. Those stamps, esas estampillas. To say that poster, but specifically we're talking about that one that's way over there, we would say aquel poster. I'm going to go back to the first one because this one's a little complicated. The word for poema is actually masculine. It seems like it should be feminine because it ends in an A, but there are a couple of tricky words like this that you need to keep an eye out for. Okay, you are now finished with the demonstrative adjectives notes. So all that you have to do now is go back to my website and make sure that you take the formative assessment, which will show me how well you've understood both comparisons from the first video and demonstrative adjectives from the second video. Gracias.